Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for attending today's session. Welcome and general session, importance of self-care. A quick moment for housekeeping. All participants are on mute. For STC purposes, participating via a group is not permitted. Please log in individually to receive STC credit for attendance. You're welcome to use the Q&A box throughout. CCR staff and/or presenters will be monitoring and responding verbally or via the box directly. STC information will be sent out the week after the conference upon verification of attendees present. STC credit will be given to all attendees logged into this session. CPOC is tracking via the attendee email logged into the session. No need to check in/type your name. All sessions are being recorded. However, the chat and Q&A feature will not be captured in the recording. At the end of the conference, you will receive an email with the evaluation link. Please be sure to complete by next Friday, June 18th. And now I'll hand it over to our moderator, Chief John Keene.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of our 5th annual CCR conference. My name is John Keene. I'm the Chief Probation Officer in San Mateo County, and I'm pleased to welcome everyone to our 3rd and final day of the conference. As much as we wish we were together in person, we are so pleased by the very rich content and high engagement that we've experienced over the last 2 days. Speaking of great content, if you have had an opportunity to attend other sessions, you know how great the content was. But maybe some of you have missed some sessions and you're wondering, God, how do I get back to those things or get a chance to see those things that I missed? Well, you're in luck. Those sessions will be available on this platform for the next month. And then after that, the recordings and slides will be available on CPOC's website. And you still have one more day of amazing sessions today. Thank you for logging back on. We're in for a particular treat today. I'm pretty sure that most of you who are participating in this conference spend much of your time worrying and caring for others. After all, that's what drew us to this work. Most of us are in probation because we like to care for other people. But what about yourselves? What have you done, quite frankly, to focus on your own personal health? It's something that doesn't happen by chance. It's something that we really have to focus in on. What have you done really to think about the toll that the work that you've done has taken on your emotions and your body? Ultimately, self-care does not really just end up on the few days that we take off or the time that we may take vacation. The reality is this has to be something that's a part of our lives every day. And no, it cannot wait until you retire. That was my song for many, many years. You know what? When I retire, I'm going to catch up on all the sleep that I've missed. When I retire, I'm going to find things relaxing to do. And honestly, guys, it's too late then. Personally, I wish I had been armed with better tools for my own wellness and mental health earlier in my career. I feel like ultimately I would have been in a much better place at this point of my career, 20-some years later. But never fret, we're going to make sure we do that for you guys that are here today. For those of you who've been a part of our conferences in the past, you know we often spend time covering elements of trauma research because it really is the foundation of the work we're doing now. Today, we're very excited to be talking about how this research applies to self-care and wellness. Our keynote speaker today, Kelly Raths. Kelly, wave to the folks. Kelly is joining us from Salem, Oregon, where she oversees the wellness and equity initiatives for the Oregon Department of Corrections. Kelly has been Kelly has been working for the Department of Corrections for the past 14 years. But her path into this work was not a traditional one. She started by teaching alternatives to violence in prison. From that work, she really found her calling. She is a certified mindfulness instructor and trained in hundreds of justice system partners in mindfulness and stress regulation. So Kelly, you're going to be right at home. Most people in probation haven't taken a traditional path. Most of us didn't go to college saying we wanted to be probation officers. We've kind of found our way to it. So this non-traditional twist and turns, it fits right in with the group you're going to be working with here today. So for our attendees, please find a quiet place, or at least as quiet as you can make it, and join the rest of us for a bit of wellness this morning. Welcome, Kelly. I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you, Chief Keene. Speaking of quietness and other things, I was hoping that that leaf blower outside my door was going to cease its blowing, but it is still, and we're going to roll with that. And that's part of the training. We're going to incorporate the things that we roll with in this work and in this life. and still find kind of our capacity to be resilient, to be healthy. And as we like to say in the state of Oregon, to put our retirement system in the bankrupt when we do retire and thrive on out the other side. So I am, with a little tech possibly help here, I'm going to share my screen and we'll go ahead and get started today. So let's see. Let me get you to the very beginning. Thank you for waiting for this piece. All right, so I assume I am looking good and someone will tell me if I'm not on the screen presentation. So again, thank you, Chief Keene. Thank you to all of you who are here today. It's really an honor. It's an honor just to spend the time. I love the topic. I love the work that you do and that we kind of as cousins in this business do together. And I personally benefit when I have to take the time to remind myself about this material. And so it's a win-win-win all around. So looking forward to the next 90 minutes or so with you. So a little bit just kind of setting the table for what we're going to do together today. Won't spend a lot of time, but of course want to introduce you to who I am and really to one of my partners who's not, joining me today, but has a significant role in the work that we've done in the Department of Corrections in Oregon and in law enforcement generally, Fleet Mall with the Center for Mindfulness and Public Safety. So for 14 years, as Chief Keene has said, I served in the Department of Corrections, and I hope that feels comfortable for you all. That I know corrections, but you probably have different kind of approaches. Like, why is this prison lady coming to talk to us? Perhaps is a question that you have. But for me, in the prison system, just a little additional background. I've worked as a chaplain. That was my first kind of role in the Oregon Department of Corrections. Then as an advocate for quality of life issues and rights and other things for those in our custody. My favorite job was working with children whose parents are incarcerated and kind of what their needs are, probably a lot of the folks that you work with and cross paths with. Worked as a business services administrator and other things that came to my way. But when I started the work, and you've probably had similar places to this, when I started the work, I was drawn particularly to those that we serve and hold in our custody. And I quickly found out that if we are not well, then those that we serve, it's going to be very difficult for us to create the opportunities for them to be well. And so I watched my colleagues in corrections, and continuing to some point, just go through a lot of kind of tragic personal things, career things, other sorts of things. And so the cost of doing this work is heavy. And so pivoting my interest then into those of us intending to ourselves and our well-being, so that we can care for the people that really, and the spirit of what brings us to this work, as Chief Keene had said. So that's a little bit about who I am. So what we're going to do today together, our process, is I am, it's one of those things where I probably have too much information for us. And you have spent the last couple of days receiving a lot of information. And so I want to just give you permission, me permission right now to say, there's more information in this presentation than you can absorb or that I can absorb or that we can do that. So don't worry about absorbing the message and the information necessarily in a cerebral way. What we're going to do more so is hopefully practice taking in some of that knowledge in an actual physical embodied way. The other piece that I always like to say is that this is meant to complement what you know. You know a ton about your work. You have individual passions and skills and life experience. And so my hope is not to be here as an expert. If we were in a room, we could learn together in a little different way, but it's really meant to complement your wisdom and everything that you know already. Today, we're going to practice. There's going to be 5 different practices that we're going to do. So actually kind of equipping you with means that you probably already have, but practicing them, taking time today to practice. And so it's going to be engaging. There are going to be some times I'm just going to tell you where you're going to watch me on this screen and be like, girl, that is so weird, or because I'm going to be doing some breathing practices, I'm going to be role modeling some things for you, and I'm going to invite you to do that at the location that you're at home. So you can kind of look left, look right, and if nobody's looking, go ahead and just get all into the practices today. So in that way too, I hope it's a lot of fun. So just make yourself comfortable. We're going to be getting into our bodies a little bit. We're going to be getting into our breath and other sorts of things, and just hopefully having an enjoyable 90 minutes together where you walk away reminded that you have incredible capacity for resilience, maybe reminded of why you love this work or what drew you to this work. And, maybe with some opportunities to laugh with me or at me. And we'll invite Chief Keene back in as we do some of the role modeling of the practices as well. So let's get started. I'm going to, and I used to work with a gentleman. He trained me in consensus building back in the 90s. If you're around, that was kind of a big thing. I don't hear it as much anymore, but the skills of consensus building. And one of the things that he always taught me and taught the people that we did is that you have to let the ugly, you have to let the gnarly, you have to let the hard story, you have to let the but what if, and it will never work if, you have to give that space in the room. And so I like to start these trainings about wellness with people in human services like all of us. I like to start that with this reminder that what we do is hard. And what we face is hard. And this isn't some, not that everybody doesn't have challenges, but that this isn't some simple challenge that we face in this career that is easily fixed with a self-help balm. And so I am going to start by telling just the particular story kind of briefly about what that means for us in Oregon in the Department of Corrections. I imagine that you will share and relate to some of that. So take and pick what does or doesn't relate to you. But I want to tell you kind of that ugly story of why is this topic and why are your conference folks, taking time to say, let's take care of ourselves. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll do that by illustrating what we learned in the state of Oregon with our Department of Corrections, kind of the hard story. So about 10 years ago in the Department of Corrections in the state of Oregon, we had an unfortunate rash of staff taking their own lives, staff dying mysteriously, just kind of out recreating and, things happening. We had staff who became people in our custody, just a real series of tragic and unfortunate, untimely loss and erosion of people's familial and physical well-being. And so we wanted to study that. What we did is we started to ask some questions like, well, gosh, it's bad, but how bad is it, right? One of those questions. So we partnered, and I'll share with you in these slides, a little bit of what we did. In 2012, we partnered with some researchers from the Portland State University who interviewed and engaged and surveyed about 1,300 of our corrections officers. And what they found, it was one of those scenarios where what they found, like we knew it was bad, but I don't think we knew that it was that bad. So what we found in the surveys in our partnership with Portland State University was that 1 in 3 of our employees displayed symptoms, reported symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, 1 in 3. We have, as hopefully you all too, we earn incredible and generous benefits as state employees, public servants, but that our employees were taking more sick leave than they had earned. And so there was something like, wow, not being able to show up to work. We had data that confirmed the rates of domestic violence, the rates of divorce, other sorts of high conflict family behaviors that were going on for our staff. We had a big one, and this has become a big issue for us. We learned that our staff, most of them are getting less than 6 hours of sleep. And we're going to talk a little bit about why sleep is so important. And so, we got a picture of like, gosh, we knew it was bad, but we didn't know it was that bad. And so that was one of the pieces of studies that we had. And again, maybe you can relate to some of this in your workforce. We also then had a doctor from the Oregon Health Sciences University who had come in to work with some of our staff, smaller number of staff in this particular study. But as a doctor was able to do blood work, blood draws, blood pressure, all of the sorts of kind of workup things And unfortunately, many of our staff don't take advantage of those benefits and go regularly see a physician or their primary care person. And what we found was some jaw-dropping information about the number of our staff who are kind of, a little bit about metabolic syndrome. It's kind of this culmination of a number of physical ailments that unfortunately puts you kind of right up at knocking at the door of stroke, heart disease, failure, heart attacks, other sorts of things like that. We had several staff people who were so ill at the time from the blood work that the doctor in his own, just kind of ethical requirements as a physician had to take those staff to the emergency room. And so again, it was just this, gosh, we knew it was bad, but we didn't know it was that bad. We did a study in 2016, and maybe you all have done these things too, and it's one of those, you want to engage your workforce, but then when you engage your workforce, you better be ready for what they tell you. And so what they told us was that, gosh, management is hard, as you probably heard. Working with the folks that we're assigned to work with in custody, that's easy. It's working with my coworkers and my managers that's hard. So we learned a little bit about morale, burnout, bullying in the workplace, other sorts of things. And so we opened that door to say, gosh, it's bad, but how bad is it, so that we could get our head kind of wrapped around what that meant if we were truly going to commit ourselves to well-being for those that do this important public safety work. We took a look, one of the things, and again, I'm just kind of moving through, and you will relate or not relate to this as you may in your own fields that you've chosen, but we took a look at, kind of the stress factors, the categories that face not only our officers, but our folks that do other elements of our work. And forgive the word inmate, we have since, as Oregon changed, we call them our adults in custody. Words matter, right? But our adults in custody, again, there's those stressors that you can relate to, the people that are in your custody. But if you're like us, it's like, gosh, the people we work with, we really care about them. We enjoy that work. But it's the occupational stressors. It's the fact that I'm always on call. It's the code of silence. It's the cultural issues. And then, as you can see, the long list of the relationships between management, overtime, staffing, conflict, the people that have the brilliant ideas in the state policy making that then roll down, as I've heard you all have been experiencing, great ideas, but did they engage you in what that idea meant when it hit the ground, so that you could, have input and share the on the ground wisdom that you had? And so there's those stressors, the psychosocial stressors. So again, we're just starting with that bad, gnarly news to say that what you do is hard work. And you know that, and it comes at you from a variety of places. And these maps aren't necessarily even reflective of, what happens for you at home. And then let's throw in some contemporary things, shall we? Like, I don't know about you all, but I think if I watch the news, you, like us, have had these incredible natural disasters over the last year, and what that has meant for us individually, what that has meant for our clients, what that has meant for our coworkers. We had to evacuate 5 prisons last year in the midst of many of our staff having to evacuate and lose their own homes to fire. So I know you have all your equivalents of that, but there's that backdrop of what we're doing. And then there's this thing that happened 16 months ago that came knocking on our door, and there is that we carry. There's a backdrop to our work that not only us, but our families, and then, those that we work with and for carry. And then we are in the midst of a racial reckoning. We are in the midst of asking new hard questions that, by gosh, we have to ask, right? And so we're facing that, and what that means for us individually, what that means for us collectively, what that means for us in law enforcement and public service. So we have that we are carrying as well. And then again, to say that each of us individually, carry our own things that are in our backpacks, whether that's with our children, whether that's with our health, whether that's with our spiritual, pieces, if you're caring for your parents, if you're in that sandwich generation, other sorts of things. So it's a lot, right? It's a lot. And it's why we spend time, and your folks have made space this morning to say, and what can we, as people who believe in change, what can we individually do to place the mirror kind of onto ourselves? And so that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to start with our first practice. We're going to do some breathing, some things that you have already been doing as you participated along here this whole time. You've been breathing with me. So let's bring some intentionality to that breath. So many of you have, you're aware of, I'm sure you've probably heard this. Fortunately, our kids do this now in school. My kids come and teach me about blowing out the candle. Their kindergarten teacher taught them that at school and other sorts of things. And so we're learning, and let's relearn again today. And I invite you to engage too, if you can, and just some simple breathing practices. So I'm going to call this one straw breathing. And the idea of it being straw breathing is the notion that if you had a straw and you were put it in your mouth, that's where we're going to exhale. It's as though we're exhaling through a straw. So we're going to inhale through our nose. So I invite you to just kind of wherever you are, maybe you're standing, maybe you're laying down because, hey, we can. It's an online training. Nobody sees where, wherever you find yourself, I invite you to just kind of take note, roll shoulders, shift body. Okay, here I am physically as an embodied person, and we're going to spend 2 to 3 minutes breathing together. So with the breathing practice, the invitation is to breathe through your nose. We're going to try, I'll lead you in a count of 4. So we're going to inhale, and then we're going to exhale as though through pursed lips, like we have a straw. And we're going to make that exhale longer than the inhale. And so as you are comfortable going ahead and joining with me, and then if you need to adjust the counts, feel free to do that. But we're going to inhale through our nose for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to exhale through pursed lips for 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, getting to the bottom, and then inhaling 2, 3, 4, and then exhaling through pursed lips 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then inhaling through the nose, adjust as you need 3, 4, and then exhaling 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to let you just make this rhythm on your own. So you're inhaling through your nose and then exhaling through pursed lips. So you're going to find whatever count is fitting for you. The goal, shorter inhale through the nose, extend out that lengthy, long exhale. So let's give 2 more rounds of a breath, inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your lips. And then 1 more round of an inhale for a shorter count. And then an exhale last time, just really seeing you can push the air out gently, maybe come all the way till your lungs are empty. All right. So straw breathing. Chief Keene, how was that? What did you notice? Questions, confusion?
I think what I noticed is, and you're going to talk a little bit more about this today, but it's a very intentional act. So it stops and makes you focus. And so much of our lives are about kind of moving from one thing to the next. And this feels like a very easy way to slow myself down. And then also what I noticed too is that it's a very different breathing technique than oftentimes we learn in law enforcement. Usually in law enforcement corrections, it's the combat breathing, it's, that very, kind of almost more of a more violent, almost kind of more pushy way of breathing to kind of control your breath if you get into a critical incident, versus this being much more mindful, much more intentional, and it just really helps to settle you and center you. So it felt really good to do, especially first thing in the morning. We've been kind of ripping and running and trying to get ready today. So it was a nice way for me to kind of slow down a little bit.
Nice. Yeah, and as we go through, we'll build on our breath is our companion, right? It's our companion, whether we know it or not. So we're going to bring some intentionality. And you're right. We do this in law enforcement or when we're learning to shoot. Often, sometimes when I'm training, people are like, oh, that's what I do when I shoot. I exhale and then, pull the trigger. And our breath can guide us to upregulate when we need to, which we do in this business often, and then downregulate when we need to, which is most the rest of the time. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. Well, that's our first practice under our belt. Thank you, Chief Keene. We're going to keep on moving and just building. Again, just let it build, let it slide, whatever comes for you. So that's the tough story. That's what we do. Again, you may or may not relate to everything that is real for us, where I come from, the Department of Corrections, but what you do is hard. What you carry is significant, and what our clients carry, probably double that is significant. So let's understand a little bit, for us around like, gosh, why, why do our folks, sometimes become unhealthy? Why is it that our motto is retire and, bankrupt PERS? Like, we want you to live, because sometimes we worry that our folks aren't going to come out of retirement and thrive, as Chief Keene had alluded to. So let's just learn a little bit about why. Why is that from a physiological standpoint, from a brain standpoint? So that's what we'll talk about here. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about stress. What is stress? It's desserts spelled backwards. I like that. So let's talk a little bit about stress from an autonomic nervous system standpoint. And again, if you all have been learning about trauma, you've been learning on your own, whatever kind of angle you come at this from, this is probably somewhat familiar. If nothing else, we're going to give you a couple of vocabulary words that you can go home tonight over dinner and be like, well, that's your parasympathetic nervous system, right? And so maybe we'll give you something where you can kind of sound like you're very wise, if that's impresses the people around you. So let's learn a little bit about the autonomic nervous system. It's this beautiful, like most of the things in our body, but most of the ways that, we've been created, evolved, whatever your understandings of that are, it's beautiful, it's elegant, and it's simple. And so just take a little bit of time, and in the autonomic nervous system, what we're talking about is something that impacts kind of all of our functions, right? All of our organs. It's the upregulation and the downregulation, and it's not just one piece of it. So it's really everything from our vision to our digestion, to our bladder, and everything in between. The nervous system has impact and partners with our full body. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. We are built to upregulate and downregulate. So the story that I like to use is, if you live in a neighborhood where you have a postal person that comes and goes, and let's say you have a dog or a puppy or something like that. So the dog is the example of a great and well-tuned autonomic nervous system. So the dog is sleeping, right? Sleeping on the bed or wherever that dog is sleeping, maybe having little doggy dreams, drooling, other sorts of things. And the dog hears the slide of the postal person's door down the block. Oh, there it is, right? So puppy was in deep parasympathetic nervous system space, and then ting, oh, it's about that time. The light is coming in through the window at the right angle, and I just heard the slide of the door. So now the dog is kind of like stepping in, coming into its sympathetic nervous system. Its pupils are going to dilate, its body is starting to shift, and you can follow along here on the graph. So as the postal person is coming down from one door to the next, the dog knows that, hey, it's coming to my door now, right? So it's up in the curtains. And it's, pushing through the windows, it's up at the curtains, and then it goes down to the door slot, and the mail comes in and it's sliding in, and oh, this is it. I'm defending my turf, right? I'm in full sympathetic nervous system. I'm breathing from my, chest place as the dog has chest. And anyways, barking like he's defending territory, like this is it, live or die, right? The postal material comes in through the door. The postal person recedes down the sidewalk and then heads off down to the next, and the dog's like, does its little growl, does its little looking around, things are kind of slowing down. Whew, defended my territory, live or die to see another day. Puppy, spins around on the bed, walks a couple times, shakes a little bit, and then boom, it's back out, right? Beautiful example that dog has just given us of when to go sympathetic to parasympathetic, right? That's what we're built, this beautiful space that we're built to keep ourselves safe and be heroic. But for us as humans, with this great big frontal cortex that we have, we overthink things sometimes, and we can get ourselves jammed up in that sympathetic nervous system side of the equation. So maybe like the dog that's able to plop back down on the bed and be like, take a snooze, we're replaying it again. Like, well, gosh, maybe next time, should I do this? Should I do that? So there's some things that we do as humans, and we'll continue to kind of learn together, and you can relate to this to yourself or not, of how we get ourselves kind of jacked up and stuck on the sympathetic nervous system side of things. And then we've got these little boxes, and they like to keep us in our sympathetic nervous system. Oh, we're scrolling. Oh my God. Oh, can you believe? Oh, it's a headline, right? Like, so we're jacked up, and then, oh, my boss is calling. Oh my God. So we have this modernity that keeps us kind of jacked up, sometimes out of habit, on that sympathetic nervous system side of the equation. So a lot of what we're doing, we need to be in the sympathetic sometimes, but a lot of what we're going to learn today is how to help us reequate and drop back into the parasympathetic side. So that extended exhale was an example of that. So just another slide here, and I think these slides have been shared with you or will be available. What happens when we're in that stress response? Our breathing rate changes, blood pressure, heart rate, metabolism, blood sugar, adrenaline, sensory awareness, lots going on there, right? And other things are kind of compromised. So generally speaking, for us, some of what ails us is that we spend a lot of time in the fight or flight, and our worlds and our careers that we have chosen have contributed in some ways to that, right? So we'll talk more about it. We're going to walk ourselves into kind of our next little skill set exercise. You can take or leave any of these that you want, but we're going to talk about the vagus nerve. So let me hop back just a little bit here. You'll see there on the screen, there's the vagus nerve, and it's the mother nervous, train system for a lot of our major organs and arteries, these things that keep us alive. And so if you want to, if you're comfortable, you just kind of rolling your neck around here. The vagus nerve, it's coming up, they call it this occipital bone here behind our ears, coming kind of down into our jaw and then just down through here. So you feel free if you want to just roll your neck, if you're comfortable, you can kind of just run your finger down through there. Again, we're doing some somatic learning today. But we're gonna, this is the vagus nerve that we're talking about. Now, you have seen and perhaps made fun of a traditional, call it Eastern, call it yoga, call it whatever, but there's this vagal nerve stimulation technique that we're going to explore, and I encourage you to make your own. And what it does, and we can get, if you're nerdy and you want more of the science, I'm happy to share more with it, or maybe you know it and you can share some with me too. But the vagus nerve is one that cannot shut down. So I'm going to tell you just a quick story about my cousin Brent. He works in an NIH lab. It's the National Institute of Health. And it's one of those ones where it's like you have to go through 4 different doors and suit up and put this, big thing on because they're dealing with these gnarly diseases that could take us all out. So a little bit of stress for my cousin Brent in his NIH lab work. And so one of the things that Brent had, my cousin, he had is this feedback loop of pain in his gut that he could not figure out. So he went to lots of different doctors, like some of us find ourselves doing, like, what is going on here? All the way to spending a week at the Mayo Clinic, getting kind of all worked up. And the less than satisfactory offer or conclusion that they had back to my cousin Brent was, you are stressed, and the stress is running up and down that vagal nerve system, and you've just got this pain feedback loop. And if you know much about like antidepressants and other things, it can't shut down the stimuli going up and down the vagal nerve, because that's what keeps us alive. And so they sent him to acupuncture, and they also, I like to joke, sent them to his cousin Kelly, the mindfulness instructor, to gain some techniques. So one of the things that my cousin Brent and I had worked on, and others I invite you to just explore today, is some vagal nerve stimulation. You can go on Amazon and buy machines and other sorts of things that will stimulate your vagal nerves, or you can do the cheap life hack that I'm going to have us practice today together. And that's what we know those yogi people that sit on mountains to do, is that humming. This is where it gets weird, and you're gonna, I encourage you to practice along with me, but you're gonna have to watch me, laugh with me, not at me. We're gonna do some humming just for 2 minutes to make some noise. and it stimulates and can help relax that vagal nerve. And again, send signals down through the nervous system that, you know what, things are okay. Lungs, pancreas, spleen, liver, digestive tract, things are okay. So here's what we're going to do. All right, bear with me. Vagal nerve stimulation. Again, I'm going to invite you wherever you're at. Perhaps you're seated, perhaps you're lying on the floor. Maybe you're in your car because your children are really noisy and that's the only place you can get away. Wherever you find yourself, I'm just going to invite you to just, again, roll shoulders. Inhale, exhale a little bit. Just notice your breath. And then what we're going to do, I hope you do with me, is for just 2 minutes, we are going to sing, hum. I'm just going to hold a particular note. And we're going to stimulate those vagal nerves. So let's join in with me if you are comfortable. So I'm going to take an inhale, and then I'm going to exhale. Go all the way out just till it's comfortable. Inhale and exhale. Okay, I will save you the other continuing of my noise, but if you want, feel free to just continue along. Again, I'm feeling it because I can actually feel the vibration there on that vagal nerve. So let me give you a couple different other ways that you can do this. One is, maybe a particularly fun one that'll get you more engaged than some other methods. We have a national anthem. Most of us know the national anthem. And if you ever have sung it, it's kind of hard to sing. But when you are in your car, if you're like, that's where I like to do my best, Whitney Houston version of the national anthem. When you're in your car, and Chief, you're welcome to turn your camera on and join. Try singing that national anthem like a Whitney Houston champ. Just singing it, vibrating. Those choir folks, we joke the choir people are always so happy. Part of why they're happy is they're stimulating their vagal nerves. So one way you could try this is by, belting out the national anthem every once in a while when you find yourself in a safe shower or your vehicle. The other piece, and this is a little more edgy, but I will tell you my folks in the Department of Corrections like it, is you can pick one of your favorite choice words. I don't know what that choice word is for you, but this is the one that gets my cousin. You can pick that favorite choice word and just go, whatever that word is, and just hold it because it feels good sometimes. All right, Chief Keene. Vagal nerve stimulation. Looks like you might have explored it. How was that? What are your thoughts? What did you notice? Question.
So I have to admit, I was already aware of the vagal nerve stimulation. So I'm one of those nerdy folks that actually has, a few of the little stimulators, from our own stuff. So, what I really noticed the most about it is that when you do it enough and you become very mindful of it, you actually do start to feel it in the full length of the nerve. You can feel it all the way into your gut as it starts to kind of almost untangle and relax. And so it was a very interesting story you shared about your cousin, because it does really get into that nerve area. So for me, it felt very comfortable. And so for me, I do my best Whitney Houston in the shower. So that's typically where I tend to do that. But it's a good exercise in the car, particularly here in the Bay Area when you're stuck in traffic. So we all look weird in the car anyway, so you might as well do something that's going to relax you. So, I think that's an excellent opportunity for some self-care in that way.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, great to know you are a vagal nerve. Yeah. I mean, you can find them. Does the one you have have little nodes that you kind of hook on, or?
Yeah, it has little nodes you hook on. I had a quick question for you. So there was a question in the chat that asked, does the vagal nerve extend on both sides of the neck?
It does. Yeah, gosh, and this is where I get, what I had illustrated both, but yeah, you can do either side. So explore if one works better than the other, or if you notice something in one spot more than the other.
Yeah, I tend to carry my stress more on one side than the other. So I find myself having to activate one a little bit more. And then also too, before we go too far, just a quick question from the last exercise. Is
Yeah.
there a particular reason why the exhale is longer than the inhale?
Great question. I'm glad it's something I failed to mention this time. One of the things, and some of us can feel our pulse and some of us can't. So no worries on if you can't feel your pulse. But if you can feel your pulse, and maybe when you go, if you've ever noticed, you can kind of game the blood pressure system. Don't game the blood pressure system if you really have blood pressure issues. But when you inhale, you may notice that our heart rate goes up on an inhale and the heart rate goes down on an exhale. It's called our heart rate variability. It's kind of if you get real fancy in your workouts. But yeah, so on the inhale, we actually were up regulating. So it's connected to that nervous system. And inhale naturally stimulates an up regulation, and the exhale naturally stimulates a down regulation. So for our exercise that we did, we were working intentionally to down regulate into the parasympathetic. But you can also upregulate. Sometimes we need that too. Like if you're working a graveyard shift and it's 4:30 or 5 in the morning, you can upregulate. So yeah, great question.
Thank you.
You bet. All right. 2 exercises under our belts, my friends. Let's continue on a little bit about chronic stress. And again, I hope this is complementing what you all know as experts in a lot of this stuff already. But chronic stress, and I will just read this, chronic stress, we know this, results from a state of ongoing physiological arousal. So that sympathetic nervous side of our system again. This occurs when the body experiences stressors with such frequency or intensity that the autonomic nervous system, there we go, does not have an adequate chance to activate the relaxation response on a regular basis. So the body remains in a constant state of physiological arousal, as we saw that affects all the body systems, right? All those things. There's kind of a chemical signature, a churn that's happened. And we're just not built to kind of live in that. We were built to handle acute stress. Those moments where like, oh, you got to go, or gosh, I'm about to do a presentation this morning and I'm going to be a little nervous. But we weren't built to live in chronic stress, okay? So that's, again, part of that question we're asking, why? Why do we see this? Why do we have some health crises or other sorts of just kind of levels of depletion amongst ourselves in this field, but really just kind of, unfortunately, widespread across humanity? So if we were in a group, if we were in a room together, and I was a big spender, which I would be for all of you, I would have little bags of Jelly Bellies. So Jelly Belly jelly beans, kind of the fancy Jelly Belly belly beans. And if you're familiar with those, there's, sometimes on the bags or the boxes, however you get them, there's recipes, right? You can add like 3 blueberries plus 1 lemon equals XYZ. So we use this just as kind of a fun way when we're in class together to illustrate that there's a chemical cost too, right? For our bodies to live in some of these upregulated spaces, some certain emotional spaces. We're spending some capital, some chemical capital, some hormonal capital to kind of sustain those states of mind and those states of being. And so you can kind of see, again, it's a little small, but there's some general emotional thematic spaces on the left. So anger, fear, depression, working our way down to relaxation and kind of love and serenity support. So there's some thematic emotional spaces. And then there's the chemical hormones that are kind of used. And then it goes into talking about what the recipe for those spaces are. So you can kind of just see, and again, the glance of this slide and the exercise we would do together would be that to live in spaces of fear and anger and withdrawal, depression, and a lot of our clients, but we're talking about us today, a lot of our clients and some of us, can live in those spaces, is that, we're putting down a lot of capital. And at the end of the day, when we're putting down all that capital, we may not be leaving, some of that hormonal capital, those other reserves and things for other parts of our body that, that we delight in, exercise, other types of things, that's why we kind of are typically exhausted when we get done with work and other sorts of things. So that's the point, is to illustrate, again, helping us answer this question of why. So cortisol is one of those hormones, and cortisol is pretty easy at this point. It's been well studied. You can swab your mouth, and we did some pre-post studies with some of our employees when we were addressing stress and other things. So we'd swab with cortisol and, kind of measure pre-post, did the intervention help them. But you can see that flooding our systems with cortisol affects everything from our memories. Like I'm holding my keys or I'm holding my phone and I'm like, where's my keys? Where's my phone, right? Our thyroid, blood sugar, which a lot of us deal with, sexual arousal, partners, all those, the things that make us, alive. And I won't go too much into that sort of piece, but, there's impacts that to that aspect of those intimate relationships that we have, our blood pressure, inflammation. And then, gosh darn it, that abdominal fat piece, right? The abdominal fat that hangs because our body's like, oh, we're heading into a dire time. We may not have resources. Danger, danger. Let's pack that fat right on our abdomens because we might need it. It's a kind of a threat response piece we have. So again, relate to that if it's fitting for you. And then the last piece, and I know we've all seen these things, is the stress warning signs. We have a wonderful tool in Oregon through our benefits program. It's called Whole Life Directions. And I try as much as I can to get our staff to take the 5 to 8 minute questionnaire on whole life directions. Because sometimes we need to look back through these lists. We are so good at adapting to stress that we ask one another, like, how are you? How are you really? And we're like, I think I'm fine. But we've adapted to some things. And so sometimes just those little check-ins for you as you're maybe looking at the screen, gosh, I do relate to some of those things. So yeah, Chief Keene, and if you have anything, just feel free to jump right in there. We're going to move to another exercise. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to just say, you really, for me personally, you really hit home with some of the screens and great inside out pictures on the other side. The little angry guy is somebody that I certainly resonated with. But, it was interesting. You talked about those prolonged periods of stress. It's interesting how in this work, how that hypervigilance that oftentimes we strive to get to is so counterintuitive to our long-term health. Whether it's working inside a correctional facility or juvenile hall or in the field, we really do put ourselves in that space where we're always trying to be very constantly aware. And then that awareness then unfortunately turns into hypervigilance, which turns into, as you described it, this inability to turn it off. And it manifests itself in so many harmful ways for us, in which you listed so matter-of-factly on those previous pages. And so it's just really interesting how, frankly, a lot of what we do and how we train is very counterintuitive to our long-term wellness.
Yeah, we are certainly wrestling with that, in Oregon, because I want you to be safe. I want my colleague to be safe. When that radio call goes off, or when you're in, your client is having, I want you to go there. But then we also really want you, and we're built in this beautiful way to then return so that we can show up and be resilient the next day. So yeah, you're right. It's some aha moments that I know we're having of like, oh, but I train you to run scenarios all the time in your head, right?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and it manifests itself, into our personal lives too. Very few of us can turn it off. So, I know for me, I only sit in certain places. I drive a certain way. When I go to restaurants, I have to have a certain seat, that I'm not comfortable having any of those other things. And so it becomes so pre-programmed into us. And when you said, hey, are you okay? We are so knee-jerk to say, yes, we are. And another question about that area, you had mentioned the assessment, the questionnaire that you guys have in Oregon. So we have something similar to that in my county, where there's a wellness questionnaire that's tied to our wellness program that we use. The one that you referred, is it a separate standalone kind of stress assessment, or is it made through your EAP or kind of government kind of wellness program?
Yeah. The one that I mentioned, and I know there's a lot out there, is through our EAP, our Employee Assistance Program, and it's a vendor they've chosen. It's called Whole Life Directions, and we use it because it's available to us. It's great, but I can happily send it to you too. We're trying to get it on every agency issued phone, so that our employees just kind of have it at the regular. It's got a bunch of techniques and stuff built into it. But yeah, lots of different good things out there.
Okay, awesome. I think probably when we send the slides out, that would be great to kind of just have it as a reference. Probably many of us have it in our EAPs, but we don't always know what's all inside there. So thank you for bringing that up.
You bet. Yeah, we have so many great benefits. We just need to use them. That's what we say. So we're going to just do another little technique in breathing. So babies, we talked about puppies already, but babies and puppies know how to breathe. And so again, we want you to be able to be in a responsive standpoint. This training is assuming that we probably spend a little too much time in the responsive standpoint. And so there's some down regulating. And so we're going to talk a little bit about belly breathing. Again, you have probably heard all about this, you know about it is, so it's just an invitation to kind of practice maybe what you know. But if you watch a dog, if you watch a baby, a healthy baby that's, not in distress, they breathe with their bellies. The bellies go up, the bellies go down, the bellies go up, the bellies go down. And that's our innate kind of parasympathetic space to breathe from. When all is well, we breathe from our bellies. So let's practice that just a little bit. So kind of the opposite, and it's not a one or the other, but just to kind of create some distinction. There's belly breathing. I'm going to refer to belly breathing, and then there's chest breathing. So chest breathing, similar to the inhale, chest breathing is kind of connected to when we privilege breathing from the chest, we're connecting that to a sympathetic nervous response. So I'm going to invite you, and get in whatever space you are. Sometimes like to roll shoulders or shake just a little bit, but let's explore, if you are comfortable, a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly, and just breathe. You don't need to control or manage your breath. Just being curious to see if you can even notice. You might not. If your body tends to breathe from one place or another, do you notice a rise and fall in your belly? Do you notice a rise and fall in your chest? And again, don't work too hard. If you can't notice it, you can't fail at this because you're still breathing. So we're just noticing kind of where do you breathe from, chest or belly. So I'm going to teach you a couple just different ways that you can disarm chest breathing. Again, chest breathing is kind of primarily associated. It's like if we're going to sprint, if we're, we breathe from this place up here in our chest. I will tell you that we have a lot of chest breathers in the Department of Corrections. When I stand at shift change, I'll notice like it's people that don't really have necks anymore because they're breathing, they just become habituated chest breathers. And I'm like, drop it down. But some ways to disarm chest breathing is to actually disarm the muscles that we use in chest breathing. So I invite you, if your body is able, one way we can disarm chest breathing is, putting our hands kind of behind our head. And just, you're welcome, if that's comfortable for you, to just kind of hang out there for a little bit and see if you notice. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If your breath starts to move down to your belly, most of us kind of habituate to a chest breathing. Again, just modernity does that to us. You can, if you have a wall, I've got, painting, this is another way to do it. You can, if you're in a panic moment and you walk up and you want to kind of look cool, because really what you're trying to do is manage your overexcited response. You could put your arm up on the wall and be like, well, tell me about that. And really what you're doing is trying to disarm your chest breathing so you can get into your belly and breathe a little bit. Another thing, and not everybody's bodies do this, but, in corrections, unfortunately, it's easy for us to remember because we talk about a cuffing stance. And I know that's triggering for a lot of folks, but putting hand behind the back, hand above the head, just other ways that we're kind of disengaging the chest. And you may find like, ouch, that's tight. Like I can't move those muscles. So just giving us some insights into if we're breathing from chest or we're breathing from belly. At night, when you go to bed, laying your hand on your belly. And again, you're not, going to whip yourself if you're not doing this, but seeing if you can move your breath to your belly, it's cueing your body that all is well. And I can drop into a space of relaxation and begin to heal. So Chief Keene, any thoughts on chest breathing or belly breathing? Your neck rolling there.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when you put your hands and it can be triggering, right? to put your hands behind your back, but I think it really forces, those muscles to relax. And you're right, we get so, we're so tense and we kind of get stuck like that. And so, realize that these parts of your body aren't moving as much as they used to. And so, it definitely feels very intentional to kind of, once again, expand your chest, kind of lower those muscles. Once again, bring this idea of your breathing back to the forefront, because it's something that just happens, but we are not necessarily breathing the best way we can. So certainly for me, I'm more of a belly breather. I've kind of like focused in that area over time, but it's certainly something where it took time for me to get there, because I was certainly very tensed and kind of tight, and I didn't really realize my shoulders could go down further because they were so stuck up here. So no, it definitely, you can once again feel the intention of how it makes you feel better.
Well, and I joke because I'm sure what is true for me, Chief Keene, is true for you, that, I have an amazing 6-pack of muscles. And so that belly breathing requires me to, kind of expand that out. So anyway, it's the ability to let that belly rise and fall.
Cortisol has not been my friend. So we're in a constant battle every day.
Good. All right. Well, let's tuck that as just another learning that maybe you already had, but we're going to pass that some chest breathing and belly breathing. Again, our bodies are built to be resilient. Our bodies are built to take good care of us and help us thrive. And so these are some ways to kind of partner with our bodies. We're going to spend a little bit of time, and boy, we could spend a lot of time, but I'll probably just start to, move through. We're going to talk a little bit about the brain. It is truly, remains to be, with all the studying that we've done of interplanetary, the cosmos, other sorts of things, we have on the tops of our necks one of the most profound, complicated, intricate things, known to us in the universe, and that is our brain. So beautiful thing. In Oregon, and in partnership with Fleet Mall and some other folks, lots of ways to talk about the 3 parts of the brain. We talk about them as, and I'm going to bring out the Dan Siegel handy thing. Many of you have probably dealt with that, but I'm going to use my hand to illustrate the 3 parts of the brain. Feel free to do that with me. The brain being, the brain stem piece. And so in our trainings, we spend time calling that Lizzie, the lizard brain. And again, some people don't prefer that, and that's fine, but it's that piece that we share with all living creatures, is this, call it the reptilian, the Lizzie brain. That's anyway what we call the brain stem piece. So that's kind of the palm and down into the wrist, the Lizzie brain. And then, we call Google for a variety of reasons in our training, but it's the kind of the search engine, that limbic system that's really kind of tucked in there. So your thumb, and I am told this is not how you make a good punch, right? You don't want your thumb in that, my law enforcement folks tell me that. But for the purpose of this exercise, the thumb comes across into the middle. And then what we call the boss in our training, the neocortex, is the rest of that kind of, this is really, human beings, we have this big neocortex. And so, that kind of is your brain right there, your neocortex up here in the front. And that's our brain. So next slide there gives you a little bit of the brain anatomy. Again, brain stem, reptilian, more primal part that runs most of what our bodies do, the limbic system, and then our neocortex right there. So that's your brain, right? And you probably use this with your young people. And then one of the fun things about this exercise is like, okay, here's my brain. And then I have a 6-year-old. So here's my 6-year-old brain. Her name is Virginia. So my 6-year-old's brain, she comes in, and this is what my 6-year-old does. Right? She's yelling at my ability to keep my flap, my full brain. And then often I end up going, right? So I'm trying to bring my brain back into full integrity so I can help bring her brain. So anyway, it's kind of a fun thing that a lot of you do with your clients, but that's our 3-part brain. We talk a little bit about, and I won't spend a lot of time, but the functions of the brain and what each one does. So the Lizzie, you'll see the don't get dead. That's the piece, is it is just its job. It is wonderful at it, and it is going to keep us alive. And in doing that, It's constantly scanning what could be a threat, either physical or social. You know, if I mean mug you right now and I'm like, oh, and roll my eyes, you know, those are all threats that Lizzie's picking up on. So there's that part of our brain. Again, we call it the Google, but the limbic system, it's everything that you've ever known, learned. It just gets put right in there. It's the way that you filter stimuli and knowledge. You know, right now we are spending, thankfully, a lot of time talking about bias, you know, and that is where bias lives for us, you know, based on, you know, what we've seen and been exposed to. And so we have to really examine that. So that's the limbic system. And then the boss, this is, again, this part of us that makes us profoundly human, gives us the capacity to do remarkable and amazing things, to solve problems, to connect, to do art, to think, you know, that's so. Again, 3 parts of the brain that we could spend a whole day on. So one of the things, and again, I'm assuming a lot of us know this, you know, we know it just experientially, but this is, again, helping us answer the why. The why are things the way they are? Is that this brain, again, to save us, preserve us, to keep us moving through life, is built with a negativity bias. And so what happens in our brains is that we have experiences, cruddy experiences. They can be things we saw in the news. They can be something somebody said to us. They can be stubbing my toe as I walk down the stairs. And those things instantly go into long-term memory. Whoop, just like the inside out, you know, those whoop, right into long-term memory, stuck in the limbic system. So we're building our way to the next exercise that we're going to have is about what we have to do to store positivity in our brain. So our brain automatically going to remember the negativity. Automatically, you know, we just were processing and training, and it was a phenomenal training, but there was one bad video. So what did we spend 45 minutes of our whole hour talking about? Oh, that bad video, right? So what do we do to really create a bias in our minds for what is beautiful and positive? And that's what this next exercise is going to be. Chief Keene, did you have anything in particular that you wanted to? All right, well, let's do this exercise together then. This is an exercise, lots of different things out there in the world of positive psychology and, you know, other kinds of things, but this is an exercise that is built to help us start banking positivity, to start talking to the 3 different parts of our brain and assuring them that, you know, life is not just threat. So I'm going to invite you again, in whatever space you find yourself, whether you're standing in your car, you're lying down, it's okay to lay down. Nobody can see you unless you're, you know, so wherever you find yourself, you're sitting, to just, again, kind of take some presence. So just become aware. Here I am, I'm breathing, you know, maybe move, if you're a little tired, you can move your shoulders around a little bit, just kind of shake, but just, we're going to come into our body. And then for the next 3+ minutes, we're going to spend some time doing this safe, resource, and connected exercise. So we're going to be talking to the 3 different parts of our brain. And to the degree that we can, we're going to, you know, they said 12 seconds to bank positivity into our long-term memory. So we're going to err on the side of caution and go at least 30. But we're going to bank these different experiences in and see if you can physically feel them. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but let's just practice. So from wherever you're at, you know, creating some degree of alertness for yourself, some degree of comfort. I'm going to invite you, you're welcome to keep eyes open or closed, what's ever comfortable, but I'm going to invite you into these 3 contemplations. So the first contemplation is that right here, right now, at this moment, we're talking to our core brain, our brain stem. Right here, right now, at this moment, I am safe. So I'm going to invite you through the mind, through the repetition of the words, to just see if you can access some sense of personal safety at this time. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But we're just going to keep repeating here, at this moment, right here, right now, I am safe. May bring to mind times where I wasn't safe before, or scenarios of, like, well, what if, right? We're just going to bring it back to at this moment, right here, right now, I am safe. And just exploring to the degree that you can with your breath in your physical body, in your space that you're in, can you access some safety? At this moment, I am safe. And if you can access that, what does it feel like in our bodies? So at this moment, I am safe. And to the degree that we can, we're just going to try to bank that sense of safety in, that at this moment, maybe not in the past, maybe not in the future, but at this moment, I am safe. And to the degree that you can, what does it feel like in our bodies to be safe? And again, your mind could get busy, it might wander, but we're just going to bring it back to breath and the words, I am safe. So that's the first contemplation, I am safe. And maybe you just want to hang out and stay there and just kind of explore that sense of safety. The next contemplation that I'm going to move to is this notion that we're resourced, that we have everything that we need. So we're going to start to talk to that limbic system a little bit. Maybe for you, the words that come to mind are, I am blessed, I am taken care of. There's food, there is shelter, there's water. At this moment, everything that I need is available to me. At this moment, I am blessed. I am taken care of. I have my needs met. At this moment, I am resourced. And again, it is the habit of the mind as we're contemplating these things to think about maybe the time that you hadn't been, or gosh, what if that check doesn't clear, or whatever those things are. That's just the habit of the mind. Again, it wants to keep us alive. It wants to keep us going. And we're going to invite ourselves into the space of, nope, at this moment, I'm resourced. I'm good. I have everything I need. And again, what does that feel like in our physical bodies? I have everything I need. And then the last contemplation, and again, feel free to stay with the previous two, but the last contemplation is really speaking to the boss, the neocortex of our brains, our minds, and it's to say, I am connected. So right here, right now, in this moment, I am connected to the people I love. You can bring them to mind. I am connected to Chief Keene and the people that helped bring about this training for us today. I'm connected to all of you. I have people in my corner who look out for me. There are fur bodies or human bodies that love me and have my back. At this moment, I'm connected. Again, just bringing to mind maybe those faces. What does it feel like to feel connected to others? So again, maybe this is easy, maybe you're struggling, but we'll just take another minute or less to revisit the contemplations that at this moment, I am safe. And what does that feel like if you can feel it in your body? At this moment, I am safe. At this moment, I am resourced with everything I need. And at this moment, I am connected to others. They have my back and I have their back. So with one more breath, just inviting you to take one more breath if you were able to get through that, and then exhaling, and then Chief Keene and I, when we're ready, are just going to check in. Safe, resourced, connected. Trying to bank some positivity. How was that, Chief Keene?
This is So I had like two reflections as we were working through this. One, this would be a wonderful resource to work with those we serve, because ultimately these three things I think resonate so much with the average person who comes through our doors, whether they're youth or adults. And this idea of being safe, being resources, and being connected is something that's universal, right? It's those universal sets of needs we all have. And then on a personal level, it really kind of made me think about my own kind of journey and my own arc. And interestingly, I was raised by a Depression era grandfather. And so the thing that was really kind of beat into my head as a young person, which I still struggle with today, is the idea of being resourced, right? The thing that brings me the most stress is this idea of having the things that I need. And so, and it doesn't play out in like crippling ways or anything. It's more like quirks that I have. My wife teases me about never throwing food away that she knows I'm never going to eat. But my grandfather has kind of put this in my head that, you hold on to things because that's what he did during the Depression. So I think it's it's definitely a good practice. It's one that I know I will certainly incorporate into my personal life. And I just kind of harken back on, if I was actually doing day-to-day field work and working with clients, I would definitely find a way to incorporate this discussion in my day-to-day with them, because I think you have to be careful for people who don't feel these things, right? And have those tools ready to kind of, they say, I'm not safe, or I don't have what I need. How do you manage that, right? And it could be a good avenue for you to connect them with things in those areas and build rapport. But it just feels like it's something that's so universal that it could easily be a great opportunity to really help to kind of put the people we work with on a positive path.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. Yeah, when it is not true for someone, especially our clients, we respect that it's not true. But for the moments when we can, again, we're our neuroplasticity, we can rebuild our brains to maybe give us some extended platform of like, oh, I can work from here. I can, So thank you for all of that. You're such a wonderful training partner. Let's do this all the time together. So, all right. So another tool into our toolbox, safe, resource, connected. And again, maybe as you evolve it, there's different words or other things that you want to find, but we're banking what is good. We're using the neuroplasticity, the idea that we can reshape our brains, which we didn't really know we could do, about 10, 20 years ago. So this is cool stuff. It's cool stuff for me. All right. So we're going to bring it on home here in the last little pieces. And then, if there are some time to engage in other sorts of things, I just appreciate all the generosity of your time. And again, it's an honor to be with you, but we're going to bring it on home with some conversation about hope. And that, again, this reminder that we are all born to thrive. And as you know, that, our clients are born to thrive. This is the hope piece. So we're going to talk a little bit about mirror neurons. We already talked a little bit about neuroplasticity, and then end with the power of mindset. So I'm a big fan of a woman named Kelly McGonigal out of Stanford University. And so maybe you're familiar with her. We'll just touch a little bit on her work. All right. So why mirror neurons? Why is that really important for me? And again, I would imagine we're similar in that we're thinking, just as Chief Keene did, beautiful connection back to those you serve. And yes, we want to share this with those we serve. But I want to talk about mirror neurons, and you probably, know some things about them as well, as to why it's so important for us to practice this, why it's so important for us to be well. And part of that is this, lovely little thing called mirror neurons that we're learning more about. And that's because we're contagious, right? We are contagious in good ways, and we are contagious in challenging ways. And we're not talking the mandatory mask kind of contagious, right? Talking about kind of the ways that we show up and the ability to have influence over one another. And so this is going to tap a little bit into, conversations that you all have probably had about secondary trauma exposure and vicarious trauma exposure. And again, getting a little bit at the why behind that, the way we're built. So we're soft wired to kind of mirror one another. And so The origin, if you know this, and you can look it up, and there's some great, YouTube videos and other sorts of things, but kind of the origin of how we came to understand these mirror neurons. And again, I'm going to go back to these two brains, my 6-year-old's brain and my brain. And when she flips, I flip, we softwired to kind of mirror after one another. And, it's attributed to kind of back, I think in the 1990s, there was a lab in Italy somewhere, and they were studying primate brain waves. And so the story as it goes, and I haven't, been able to original source verify this, but the story that I keep finding is there was a primate in a lab who was hooked up to, the MRI or whatever the modeling to go onto the computer. And what they were following was, different things the primate would do in relation to eating nuts. So eating nuts, and where would that light up on the screen and other sorts of things, and how would that kind of profile of neural activity look? So a lab worker, a person comes in and, hey, there are nuts for the primates, and there's nuts sitting next to my computer, and I'm working on my computer, the lab person, and I'm eating these nuts. And the primate that is watching me eat those nuts. And what they find is, like, I'll be darned, the profile, the neural activity that's showing up as this primate is watching the lab person eat the nuts is the same as though the primate were eating the nuts, him or herself, right? So this kind of that idea that, when we watch one another. So imagine right now that I'm holding up my arm and this great big spider crawls across it. Maybe your nervous system shakes, or imagine, oh God, I should have had some more coffee, or I'm itching my forehead, or I'm just like pissed, or, something, that we were pinging off of one another, even in these virtual environments. And so this idea that we ping off of one another, I want to encourage us to use as really empowering in our work. And so if I am well, again, going back to that piece, if I am well, if Chief Keene is well, if we are regulated, if we are whole, then we can have, important impact on influencing and tending to those that come into our public service, right? So again, if we have a little bit of time, we can talk a little bit about this. But this ability, and we know from, therapy and other sorts of things, it's like, oh, how much of it, the intervention I'm using makes 15% of the difference. The placebo effect is, but that relationship that I have with a change agent. And so I want to kind of encourage us that us being well makes us incredible change agents, and it's part of just understanding that brain. So last little piece here, and again, just want to leave some time for questions, or one last practice, is the power of mindset. So this is Kelly McGonigal's work, and she's got several books. The one that I think I spent the most time with was The Upside of Stress. She's got a great, very popular TED Talk about the upside of stress, that it's not stress that kills us, it's how we think about stress that kills us. Anyway, you can watch that work. But one of the things is just the power of, how do you think about the work that you do every day? How do I think about my work in corrections? How do I think about my role as a parent? How do I think about, my role as a member of this community? How do I think about, X, Y, and Z? So we're going to talk just a little bit about the power of mindsets. One example that they give that stuck out to me is it was a woman named Aaliyah Crum. I think she was in Boston, and Kelly McGonigal talks about this in her book. They did a little mindset intervention with people whose job was to clean hotels and houses and other sorts of things. And so, if you've seen, when I lived in Boston, in big cities at night, the lights are all lit up. It's people cleaning, throughout the night, and then, probably turning around and having another job, because that's kind of the way our economy works. And so this group was folks who clean hotels, and the mindset intervention was this. It was to say that for one group of people, that they were going to spend 15 minutes with them, the staff people, and say, hey, did you know that, exercise, we all know exercise is really important, and eating well, and, we got to take care of ourselves and our blood sugar and blood pressure and all that. But did you know that cleaning hotel rooms is exercise? you're lifting mattresses, you're, vacuuming, you're crawling, you're moving, your heart rate is up, so kind of making the connection to everything that they were doing in their job as physical exercise, and that it was actually really great for them. And so how could they capitalize on the time that they were cleaning to, really benefit their well-being? And good job. So that was the 15-minute intervention for one group of people. And then the next intervention for the other group of people was, hey, exercise is really important, and we have to make time for exercise, right? We need to, you need to find time to walk. It's important that we eat a certain way. It's important that, and please make time for exercise, right? And then they let that group of people go. So the long and short, and I hope you're tracking here with me, is one was I had a mindset that, wow, what I'm doing has some upsides for me. And then another of like, oh God, I need to make time, but I don't have time because I'm, X, Y, Z and whatever else my life is. And they came back, they, like any good study, do pre-tests and post-tests. And what they found amazingly, no surprise we're talking about mindsets, is that the people who had in their mind that what they were doing was healthy and good for them actually saw changes in their blood sugar, saw changes in their waistlines, saw changes in, their weight and muscle tone and other sorts of things. And for the other folks who were doing the same work that hadn't made the connection, there wasn't that similar physical transformation. And so all of that to say, and again, you all know this, but that the way that we actually think, the tone in which our brains interpret what is happening to us impacts then what shows up in our physical bodies. And so I'm just inviting you then with a couple mindsets, and you have whatever your mindset is for your work. A couple thoughts that I had about the work that you all are doing. So one, what is your mindset? This is hard work, but I get a chance to change the world, right? One interaction at a time. Is that your mindset? I know these kids have seen it all, but they are strong, and I'm inspired to come alongside them. It's a mindset option. I work with dedicated coworkers like Chief Keene and all the people that I work with, these amazing people, and they have my back. And so I'm going to show up and do this, this work. And something good and new can come from, this scenario, this situation. So just again, that gifted piece that you already knew, but the way that you frame, the way that we frame what we are tasked as incredible public servants to do actually makes a difference in our physical bodies, shows up in how our resilient capacity, our cortisol, other sorts of things, and then just makes us really good change agents. So with that, Chief Keene, let's just bring it to a close. Let's see, if we have any questions or comments. And I've just really enjoyed spending the time with you today. So yeah, any thoughts?
I do. So first of all, thank you so much. I mean, what a wonderful way just to kind of sit us down and really, give us something very tangible we can really walk away with. And I think this last part is incredibly impactful for us, particularly in this moment in time in California community corrections. We're hearing a lot about, unfortunately, all the things that we're not. And I know that for those of us in administrative positions, we really feel the brunt of it because we feel so compelled to really raise up our wonderful staff and how great of a job they do. So we're very protective of them. And so we believe in everything that they do. But at the same time, too, this conversation around mindset is really critically important for our line as well. And really for us as chiefs, because it's important for us to really remember and to focus more on the good that we do, the importance of our work, how it actually speaks to who we are as individuals. I know for me, I've learned not to look at the stress in my job as a stressor. I look at it as an opportunity to meet things that are important to me and my values as a human being, things that matter to me, this idea of service and helping others, but also, this curiosity for learning and engagement. And so it feeds things that are really important to me. And so I realized when I started to think differently about it, my day-to-day feelings about work changed. And so this last part about the mindset really, really resonated with me. And it really harkens back to this conversation that the conference had earlier in the week around hope, this idea that hope begets hope, right? So if you have it, you show it, it's easier for you to then, move others to feel the same way. But also the absence of that then can create, unfortunately, consequences. And I think the same is true for mindset. And I think it's while we think about all these important things about our health and how we approach this work for our overall wellness, you really have kind of put a pin in something that I think is critically important to the work moving forward. We are impactful when we believe in our people, right? We have to believe they have the ability to change. And I think this idea of mindset and what we bring to the table really highlights that. I think that, there have been really a lot of great opportunities, I think, for reflection for us. And so I'm just kind of scanning now to see if there's any questions that kind of jump out. There was a question earlier about adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs program. And there was a curiosity as to whether your staff have kind of gone through that themselves to gain knowledge of their own ACEs score, and how maybe there's a kind of coalescence between higher ACEs scores and then potentially health issues, because you guys seem so much on the cutting edge in terms of just that information you've gathered around your staff. And so I'm not sure if you have any information about that or anything that's impactful in that way that you can share with us. If not, I mean, certainly we understand, because you really have provided us with a wonderful amount of information, I think, that all of us can impact. But any thoughts about that, Kelly?
Yeah, it's a great question. There was a group in Oregon, and I don't know who, but mostly with our probation, our adult probation, I'm not sure about the juvenile, who did do some ACEs score folks just to kind of take a look at what that looked like in our community corrections employment population. We haven't done it in the Department of Corrections. We have, and it's yet to be, I think, it's our theory of change right now that we're acting on, and I hope it bears out to be true. But, one of the things is our theory of change is like, gosh, if we can really invest in our staff people and their well-being and kind of front load that, will that spill down to the other side? Chief Keene, as well as I do, that we can't always assume in the same way that in corrections, unfortunately, that our staff are bought into the well-being of our, as much as in the juvenile system, other sorts of things. And so we're kind of trying to approach it with like, let's invest in you because I can get you hooked on that and then carry it out. But yeah, the ACEs, it all swirls in there, but we haven't done a ton of work with it, I guess, to say.
And there's a lot of, we had heard earlier this week that there's certainly some great national data out there that suggests that, unfortunately, many of us in this work probably do have very high ACEs scores, which, then kind of connect with some of the issues around health and wellness that unfortunately kind of hound us well into retirement. So I'd be interested in hopefully that, particularly here in California, we're able to do some connection in that work and see where there's some intersect. One more question before we let you go. You mentioned that there was a lady who did a wonderful TED Talk around this idea of the upside of stress. And so one of the attendees wanted to get that name again.
Oh, sure. Kelly McGonigal. And the last I checked, so it's like M-c, I'm a bad speller. I think M-c, big G, Kelly McGonigal. And last time I checked, she was still at Stanford University over there, where you all are at.
Yes, right down the road from me.
Right down the road.
Okay, thank you. I think that answered all of our questions. Actually, somebody put it in there in the chat for you guys. Well, actually in the question and answer. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. So in our last minute here before we close, anything else, Kelly, you have for us?
No, just thank you. I'm going to offer back the screen here. Thank you so much. I know I personally feel better, all that breathing that we got to do together. So just thank you for the work. Thank you for what you're doing. And I, look forward, if you have some good things, we'll tap in to see what we can share back up north with us that you all are up to. But I just appreciate the time, appreciate what you're doing.
Well, we appreciate you as well. We're certainly not surprised that you're doing this great work. The state of Oregon in a lot of ways has influenced California probation in a lot of the work that we do. So this is a wonderful connector. And so I hope that we're going to gain a lot more information from you in this space. So on behalf of the Chief Probation Officers, I'd like to thank all of you who have attended today. We want to give a big thanks to Kelly for taking time out of what I'm sure is a very, very busy day in terms of, what she has on her plate to just give us this really great information and really practical information that we can take away and actually do something with. And I think, for probation folks, we always hate those classes where we go and, we hear a lot of good stuff, but it's not anything we can actually put into practice immediately. So this is going to give us really good practical information we can take on and do something with today. So thank you all for logging in this morning and taking time to engage us in your own self-care and wellness. This needs to become a more regular part of your individual work. As I said, please don't imagine that you're going to wait until you retire and then you're going to, get all your wellness and everything together. I mean, hopefully, I hope that as an industry, we're able to put this more on the front end of our employee engagement of brand new employees, so that it becomes a regular part of what we do. Just a quick reminder for everyone before you log off, we have another coffee and conversation session at 11 o'clock. Today's informal discussion will focus on part 1 of the Family First Act, which is about prevention services. Please join us to hear more from DSS and from other counties about what they're doing to prepare for part 1. Then we have 2 more concurrent sessions this afternoon at 1:30. The first session is focused on addressing service gaps, which will include an analysis of the youth who were in out-of-state placement last year and some of the lessons learned from the process of finding them placement once those programs were decertified. The second session is about addressing the educational needs of youth in placement. That's certainly something I know we all care about. The focus of this session will be on the services that youth in foster care have right now, and then also what we hope to address in terms of moving forward with their trauma as they transition back to in-person school, focusing really after the whole COVID pandemic. Certainly something I know many of us are experiencing on a personal level, but imagine what it must be for our kids who now have to transition back to school after COVID. So thank you again to Kelly Raths and all of our other speakers this week. We really appreciate everything you've done. Thank you all for being a part of CPOC's 5th annual Continuum of Care Reform. Have a wonderful day. I hope to see many of you this afternoon in our sessions. Take care, Kelly, and we're all going to sign off. So thank you guys very much.
Bye-bye.